This is INCRadio, DCEM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Don't underestimate
the power
of a single
conversation.
It could change your whole life.
INCRadio Chatline.
Conversations that matter.
Are sports pointless? Arnie, what do you say?
I think it just all depends on the sports and what you're talking about when you're talking about sports, like playing sports, watching sports, or things like that. So, but no, they're not pointless.
I think to some degree they are. All right, that's our show. Thank you for joining us tonight. No, I'm just kidding. All right, what were you going to say?
It's entertaining. I think there's some aspects to sports that may be pointless, but I think sports as a whole is not pointless. So, if it's to watch the athletes playing and see how talented they are, just to forget about everything else that happens in life and watch it, I think it's great. Being able to participate in sports, I think is the coolest thing. But how much money they make, I think that part is pointless.
I think if you get down to a very basic level, like, do you need sports to survive? The answer is no. Of course not.
No.
You don't need to nail the 3-pointer in order to survive in this world. That's not real. So it's definitely like in our hierarchy of needs, like something that's not one of the essentials. It's not the air we breathe, even though for some people it kind of is the air they breathe. You see some sports fans, they're real dedicated. I would think maybe at that point it is starting to cross some lines where maybe you might be spending a little too much time and effort in sports. Maybe there's better use for your time. What do you think?
Well, what I think is useless about it is when people argue about sports, like they have no stake on the team. They just have like, oh yeah, my team's better than yours. You're not even playing in it. How could you even say that? I think that part is useless. And then they argue and they debate over it. I think that one is useless.
I think I can agree with that to a good degree because, yeah, it's people will really raise their blood pressure over arguing over particular sports. And that at that point, you're getting into it being detrimental to your health. Like for me, I love sports. I love to watch it. I used to get real fiery about, really getting into a team and not supporting the other team. And just looking back, it's like, yeah, nowadays when I watch sports, I do watch sports, by the way, whenever I get the time. It's just for enjoyment. I just want to see, just spectacular feats of like human achievement. What draws you to sports?
Honestly, depending on the sport, but I love watching football. I think it is the coolest thing. And I didn't have a team specifically. Every time like the quarterback was good looking, then that would be the team I would watch.
All right. So we discussed like the spectator part. Okay. And as Melanie dropped her comment here, someone who's not really into team sports, it's not something I invest my time in, but I do see the value for physical, mental health, and a sense of belonging and community. All right, let's go down this route. So personally participating in sports, you would agree that that has more value than the spectator?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Have you ever participated in any sports?
Yes. So, I used to play basketball when I was younger and everybody was the same height. And then as everyone started getting taller than me, then I had to go switch over to volleyball because, with that one, it didn't matter if you were short or tall. So yes, I did participate in team sports and I thought it was really good because, it makes you have to cooperate with people, right? Unless you're playing like tennis or something in an individual sport. But with a team sport, you have to work with a group. You got to work with people. It's not like you got to do it all on your own. So that's one of, I think, the benefits. And then there's also discipline, right? You can't just do whatever you want. You got to follow your coach. You got to, take suggestions from your team players. So I think in those aspects, sports is very, it's not pointless.
Okay, so but on the hierarchy of like importance of participating, I would have I would have thought that like the just the physical aspect, like the health benefits would have sat at the top. Because you mentioned the discipline and the camaraderie aspects.
But the health aspects, sometimes you get tired, you get burnt out, you get like you when you played rugby. Tell me you did not come home all bruised up. So I don't know how that
Yeah.
helps you physically.
Okay, so maybe some sports are good for your health and some are bad for your health. I could see
Yeah.
that now. I mean, I do agree with you. So I've played of course I played in like solo sports. I think solo sports are probably like, when it comes to like what's the best for you physically and mentally. In my opinion, like solo is the best. It's all on you. You compete basically against yourself for the most part. You're doing it just for yourself, for your own benefit. I would think that would be the maximum benefit, the maximum. I guess what would be the opposite of pointless? Pointful, the most
I don't
pointful,
know.
the most
And I think
pointful sport.
the individual sport is really made for those people who want to win, and they don't like to lose, because when, like you said, an individual sport, it's up to you. But if
Right.
you play with a team, it doesn't matter how good you are, because if your team is no good, you're not going to win.
Yeah, I agree. But you did mention like, the organizational aspect. So it does teach you, the give and take. You have to be able to delegate. You have to be able to play to each other's strengths. I mean, it's not just on the field. Like if you're a coach, right? Then you have to manage personalities. You have to, guide a team towards a specific goal. And I've been in both positions as a player. When you win games, it's very satisfying, but it is also very satisfying when you coach a team, when you know that the
Yes.
efforts that you put into the team and the leadership that you put in also pays off. That is also very satisfying. And we cannot deny that, like for mental health, right? So sports does play a positive impact on mental health, but as we mentioned before, like it can also be negative.
I mean, yeah, like you said, it could be negative, because if you're getting a lot of pressure to win, sometimes that could take a toll on you mentally, because then you're in that mindset, like that's all you're thinking about is having to win, and you'll do whatever. And so I think, it's on both sides of the coin. But if it's sports for fun, then yes, the mental health, I think it helps. But when you're under a lot of pressure, then I don't see how that's beneficial.
All right, we have a quick comment here. Sports is better than esports. Would you consider esports a sport?
Only if you're doing Wii and you're actually doing stuff, right? But if it's just straight on video games, then no.
All right, you're old school. Video games don't count as sports, even
Okay,
though it is competitive.
do those not? I mean, does nobody play Wii anymore?
I don't think
Not even.
there's like a competitive aspect. It's not that wide. But I think like if you would consider video games a sport, you might have to consider chess a sport because there's not really a physical aspect. Like chess is probably on par with the same
Chess is
thing.
a board game. It is not
It's
a
a board
sport.
game.
Just like checkers, just like Monopoly, it is a board game. That is not a sport. I mean, for me, when I think of sports, it has to be something that's physical, where you have to be doing things, and moving a little game piece is not really. It's more of a mental thing, So I don't think it's a sport. But yeah,
I've definitely used sports too with friends just to like spend time. Like we wouldn't be too serious. We wouldn't be too competitive when we play against each other. Like a while back, me and a friend would play like tennis, and it was just more along the lines of let's just hit the ball back and forth and get some good exercise. So I think there's also the amount of, I guess, competitiveness in sports that you don't necessarily have to be that competitive. You don't always have to win. It could always be just for fun, and that's always good for
it
your
could
mental health.
be. I
Yeah.
think it just depends. But there is one. Did you see that comment that Romy Lee put when it talks about being picked? Because I think with that, like the whole mental health thing, right? Where he put being picked last on the team, I think that hits people mentally. Because can you imagine everyone's getting picked and then like you're the last one there? How come nobody wants you? I think that would, psych you out a little bit. So so that's not healthy. So yeah.
Yeah, I know how that feels. Though, whenever I got picked last, that always motivated me. I'm like, I'm gonna prove that I am not the last person you should pick. I should be like, in the middle rounds in the little playground draft.
See, I wouldn't know what that was like because I was never the last one picked. Like even for basketball, when like I said, people were getting taller than me, I still wasn't the last one picked because they knew how fast back then I could run, and so I could take the ball down all the way to the court before anybody else could. So I was never the last one picked on any of my team sports. Even like when we played, because there's 6 of us kids in the family. So even when there were 6 of us, I would never be even the last kid out of all of us 6.
I got a comment here from PJ. Played sports most of his life for fun, not really to be the best, although he is competitive. Do you consider yourself competitive?
Very, very competitive. And so sometimes when we have sports competitions, and I know this is so bad, but I don't care. I'm just going to say it anyways. When we have sport competitions, if I think we're going to lose, I'm not even going to play.
Really?
Yes, I have to be on a team that's going to win. And so every time I played in sports competitions, we won. And because like I knew who my teammates were, I knew we were going to win. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll join the team. But then sometimes people say, hey, do you want to play? I'm like, no, not really.
All right, I think I have a different mindset and approach when it comes to this because so I played rugby for like 6 or 7 years, and it was competitive. It was Division 2 and 3, and lastly 4 because kept getting bumped down as I got older. And I've been on a team that lost literally every single game, and I know a lot of my teammates, they got disheartened and they left the team. But for me, I kind of like being in that position because that meant I would always be able to play. Like I was always willing and wanting to play the game, and so I got to learn the game a lot more because the team wasn't that good. It was just kind of like leftovers from the main team. There were 2 sides to our team. I was on the second side, and yeah, I didn't mind losing because it was like, okay, I would rather lose and be playing than to win than be on the bench. What do you think about that?
That I totally agree with, and but from like my nephews play sports, and they always have to be on the winning team because the first time they ever lost, he totally cried because he had never lost before, right? No, never. I'm not kidding. And they came running. I'm like, we never lose. Why did we lose? We're like, hey, you know what? In life, sometimes you will lose, so it's okay. It's good to learn. But if you already know you're not going to win and you're just really out there to have fun, then yes, I think it's fine to just play, and who cares if you lose, right? But if you have a chance of winning, then I would rather win than be out there the whole time playing just for fun.
Okay, let's kind of switch gears because sports is also a very big it's very big business, right? So how important is that, or does that kind of cross into the territory of it being pointless when it starts becoming a business and there's money involved? What do you think?
Personally, I honestly think it's pointless. You have all these sports figures who make so much money to do what? To play a sport that you could do for free. You know what I'm saying? And so I think sometimes they put too much emphasis on that. And then I think the reason I don't like it is because let's say you are a professional athlete, right? And you want to get paid the most, and then you're going to throw a hissy fit when you don't. See, that part I think is totally pointless.
I can see that. Like when I played sports, it wasn't professional, so we weren't getting paid to play. We had to pay to play. Basically, we had to buy our own
Hmm.
stuff. There was gear and travel that we all had to pay for because we had to. I mean, we even had to travel to like Oklahoma. And as far as like, um, I mean, we went all over Texas, even down to Houston, right? So that was like purely like you love the sport, you love the play. And then you are right. I mean, in the end, like the reason why they get paid millions is the demand, right? There's only so many seats. People are willing to pay that many seats, so that kind of drives up the cost of everything. But at some point, yeah, when you're crying about making millions of dollars over, just, you know, a ball game, that does kind of cross into being pointless. I do agree with that.
Especially like you said, we could live without sports, right? But let's say other professions that you actually need to be able to survive, they don't even make that much money, you know? So,
All right. On the flip side, though, if your city has a team, what do you say about the cohesion of the city when they back the team?
I'm gonna be totally honest. We have a football team here that never wins, but yet the fans are so loyal. I'm like, ooh, why you stick around? I mean, this team never wins, but yet everybody's all about their Cowboys.
And it's like you may not have much in common with that person, but if you see them wearing the Cowboys jersey or they have, the a sticker or something on their vehicle, then you can at least connect with that person, right?
Yes.
There's
And
also
and
the
even
opposite because like
when
whenever I travel, I buy a baseball cap from whatever city I travel, and I've
mhm.
had people insult me for the baseball team, and I was like, for one, I got caught off guard. I'm like, well, why is this random person, insulting me? And then I realized, oh, it's because of the team. It's like, well, I don't really care about this team. I just wanted to buy the hat as a souvenir.
Mhm. See, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Because like even with when I was in Sacramento and we had the Sacramento Kings and basketball team, they hardly won. I mean, yeah, they make it pretty far, but they don't ever win the championship. But going to like a live game, you've got the camaraderie you know with the other people there. So even if you don't know who it is in front of you, behind you, next to you, you get have conversations because that's something, like you said, it's cohesive. And for people to mock other people just because of their hats that they wear, see, that's pointless.
All right, as an entertaining aspect, look at this comment.
Yes.
As the spectator, I like rooting for the underdog. Is that not the most satisfying sport like story that you can watch, is when a team overcomes, their perceived, I guess, deficiencies against the better team and they win.
Yes, yes, especially if the number one team is not really good sports, very cocky and all that stuff, then yes, I do root for the underdog. But, not always. I guess it just all depends.
I think that was a really good point though, because it's like in life, sometimes you really need that inspiration that like, hey, I can overcome things if like I really, put my best effort, I can even overcome those that are better than me. And the underdog story in sports is like the prime example of that. Because I think I do remind myself every now and then, it's like, yeah, like if this team can overcome it, like I can do the same thing. I can find those same traits within me and also overcome
Yeah.
them.
And like one prime example, I don't know if you remember the Super Bowl a few years ago when it was the Patriots
Yeah.
and
And the
the
Falcons
Giants.
or the
The
Giants.
Giants. Yes, the one where the Patriots had a perfect season and all they had to do was win the Super Bowl, and then they would have beat out Miami, but then the Giants ended up winning. And I was happy only because, Eli Manning, I'm a fan of Eli Manning, and so I was kind of happy that he beat the Patriots, but then again, rooting for the underdog, like you said.
And you know what? There's another story. Same thing with the Patriots. When they were in the Super Bowl with the Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta was up by like 3 or 4 touchdowns, right? And by the third, like the end of the third quarter, it's like, well, this is over. Patriots lost. But they came from behind and they won it. And then like to me, it's like we had two stories of the New England Patriots like losing and then winning, and they're both like
Mhm.
inspirational depending on what team you were rooting for at the time.
Yeah. But I think sports has changed a lot too, because I remember back in the days, prior to when you were born, back in the days when people were playing sports, it was because they were really talented. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about any of that stuff. Whether it was basketball, or basketball like during Magic Johnson, Larry Bird's time, and all that stuff, right? Jordan, and then football during Joe Montana, Jerry Rice days, right? They weren't hyped about them being popular. It was a hype about them because they were actually good at what they did.
I think that's more true for like college sports because up until recently, like college players weren't paid. So really, like you did it because you wanted to win. There was the school pride aspect. Sometimes like when you hear stories about college football games when people attend, like the fan bases are way more rabid than like the professional sports.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's also that too. We got a comment from Melvi here. I love sports because I'm able to connect with others and learn other sports as well. Being active is important in our lives. Playing sports helps us to stay active. So yeah, I think that harped back to our earlier discussion about like the health benefits, the immediate health benefits. But now we're tying in, the inspirational benefit, the mental benefits to that.
See, but did you see that Oliver, he put in a comment there also about how it's hard to be a sports fan? And that one I could totally relate to, right? Because if your team loses, that's like a heartbreak, and it tests your patience, right? So I think that one I could relate to. And I think it's totally different when you're watching the sport on TV and then watching it live. Like baseball, I could never watch baseball on TV. I think it is like the most boring sport. But I can go to a live baseball game and totally enjoy it. So and so that's where I think whether it's pointless or not comes up also.
See, when I lived in Houston, it was difficult to be a fan of the Houston sports teams. The time that I lived there too was when the Astros were like the worst team. So they were good before and after I was in Houston. But one thing I did appreciate about like the Houston Rockets, the basketball team, was even though they weren't the best, like, and it could be frustrating that they lose, it was inspiring because those teams at the time, they really put their heart into the game. It's like, okay, you don't have to be the best, but it's like that they gave their all. They're fighting for their city, and that can be an inspiration in itself. So that's where I think like, yeah, it's nice when your team can like win the championship. But for me, what's more important is like, does this team have heart? Is this a team I can look up to and find inspiration from?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's why I liked certain football players. Like I'm my ultimate favorite player of all time. Well, not of all time, but is Peyton Manning, because not only was he great on the field, but even off the field, you can tell like when he does press conferences and everything, and then when he does different things for charity, you could see like he's a good person also, and not just a movie star type of a thing, you know what I mean? And just all about the sport. So I think how their personal life ties in also helps me see like the type of player they are. Because you could be like the greatest player, but if you're a crybaby in a poor sport, when you lose and all that stuff, then it's just not, it's not someone that I want to watch.
Right. All right. We had Tracy say, I don't sports ever. But then maybe she contradicted herself later by saying her sport is climbing. Okay, which at most needs two people, no projectiles, just her and the route. All right. Uh do you think some of these might or do you think climbing might be a sport or more of like a hobby?
Um, I think it's a hobby, but if you compete, then it's a sport. You know what I'm saying? Because they do have it where they see who could go up the fastest, right? So that's a competition. So now it's a sport. But if you're doing it for fun, it is a hobby.
See, but I'm thinking like knitting is a hobby. Can you make knitting into a sport?
No, knitting is not okay. Knitting is not a sport. Even if it is not a sport. It's not physical. I think to be a sport, it has to be physical. It can't just be sitting down with your fingers, just like chess, sitting down, moving things. It's not a sport.
Okay. Yeah, there's some gray area there. Okay, so I guess maybe we can close out our conversation. So after we've kind of taken in everything, I want to know your final thought. Do you think sports are pointless?
To some extent, yes, but not completely pointless. You know, like I said, it helps us if we're actually playing the sports because it is good for our physical activity, like you said, for our health and everything. But when people are just, like that, being a baby because they don't make so much money, I think that at that point it's pointless.
So I think, like, when you think of different levels, of course, it is pointless to some degree. But after we kind of hashed it out, like, there's the physical aspect to it, there's the mental aspect, there's the enjoyment. After all, like, what's the point of life if you can't be happy and enjoy things in life, right? So
Mhm.
maybe sports aren't as pointless as we initially laid out to be. And there's probably a sport for everybody. So yeah, sports don't have to be locked into one thing. There's something for everybody. There's competition levels for everybody too. So get out there and enjoy sport, and don't hate on people who enjoy sports. They are not that pointless. All right, any shout outs you'd like to give?
Well, if Brother Andre is watching, I just want to say happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Brother Andre, our district minister here. We thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Hopefully, we didn't take away from your sports enjoyment. We'll see you again on Chatline next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night.
Don't underestimate
The power
of a single conversation.
It could change your whole life.
INCRadio Chatline.
conversations that matter.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, Mom.
Homework?
Kind of. It's a school project, and you have to present someone from LA we admire.
Celebrity time. Who's it gonna be? Actor, athlete?
You.